your girl Jade, and I'm back with another video for you guys. So today is Christmas Eve, and Santa Claus is almost here. Sorry this video is coming out so late. My grandma is staying with me for Christmas, and so I've been having to help her around the house. So, sorry for this video coming up late. I know most of you guys are getting ready to go to bed. Some of you guys are doing whatever. But yeah, so I have some scary videos for you guys today in honor of Christmas Eve. These are horror videos. So if you guys are ready, let's begin. Okay guys, so the first one is called A Christmas Horror Story Animated, and this is going to be by Llama Arts, and I love their animations, so I thought, hey, let's do some Christmas scary animations. So I will have the link for their channel down below, but as I said before, let's get into this first story. Christmas Horror Story.
This story took place about 5 years ago on Christmas Eve night. It was around 1 in the morning, and I had just finished placing presents under the tree. I went upstairs to brush up and everything, then came back downstairs to the kitchen to get a glass of water before bed. My son Jake, who was 4 at the time, was standing by the stairs leading to the basement.
Not a good sign already.
I asked him what he was doing up so late. He pointed
Santa.
down the stairs and said, "Santa." I picked him up and carried him back to his room. I took a glass of water and went to bed. I woke up around an hour later to my son running down the hall outside my room.
Running down for the second time
I sighed and got out of bed. As I was going down the stairs, I saw Jake by the tree looking at presents. Then he ran past me into the basement stairs again. He pointed down the stairs again. This time I looked down the stairwell, and my heart dropped as I saw a black figure sitting on the bottom step.
It is time to go.
I almost screamed, but I somehow held it in. I pulled my son quietly away from the basement door and closer to the front door of the house. I moved my hand away from my son's mouth to reach for the lock in the doorknob. I tried to pull the door open as quietly as possible, but it was pointless. The squeaky hinges let out the usual ear-piercing screeches, and I cringed in my mouth and eyes as I did. Suddenly, there were heavy stomps coming from up the basement stairs. I screamed and pushed open the storm door and practically threw Jake outside. I shut both doors behind us and we ran to the neighbor's house. I rang the doorbell as fast as possible, probably 30 times before they answered. After that, we went inside and stayed there and waited for the police. Whoever that person was gone though, as determined after the police conducted a thorough investigation of the house. I ended up lying to Jake, telling him that actually was Santa Claus, but a few years later, he remembered the incident and became a little more wise to what actually happened.
Santa Claus. That was not Santa at all. Okay, so that was very creepy. I don't think I've had a situation like that before. I have had a situation where I was younger and somebody broke into our house when I was younger, but it didn't happen on Christmas though. But they broke in through our kitchen, and I think I was home that one time. This happened to us twice, actually a few times, but there was one time where I was home and they did it, and then there was a time when I wasn't home. But they vandalized a lot of stuff, but I can understand this part. So, on to the second story. Alright, now we're going to go on to the second story, and the second story is a creepy Christmas time story.
It was November of 2006. I was a 16-year-old kid living in the town of Altoona, Iowa. I went to bed early one night because I had to work the early shift at McDonald's. As I slept, I had a dream that I was running through downtown Des Moines, but I wasn't on a jog. I was running from something. As I ran around the corner of a building, I came face to face with my pursuer. A tall man wearing a trench coat and a top hat stood in front of me. The only thing visible of his face was his eyes. They were abnormally large with black pupils, and it looked at me as if it wanted something. After what felt like hours, He reached out his
Ew.
bony hand, as if he wanted me to go with him. I woke up violently from my dream, and after catching my breath, I peered around my room to see if I was safe. As I stood up from my bed, I noticed that I could see my breath. Feeling confused, I checked my window. It was latched shut. I then walked
Wait,
over
so
and checked my
you
vent.
can see your
I
breath,
could still feel warm
but
air
nothing
coming
is letting
from
in
it.
cold air.
As I sat back down on my bed, I tried to figure out what exactly was going on. That's when the figure from my
Oh,
dream
no.
appeared at the foot of my bed. I scrambled back to my headboard.
What do you want?
I asked, trying to hide the shakiness in my voice. With the same bony finger, it pointed at me. Growing up in a religious home, I believed what I was looking at was a demon. I told the creature to leave. It just waved its finger at me, and with a low voice, it spoke to me.
Never leave. Always.
Oh, that's creepy. Oh no, why his
The
eyes?
creature then screamed
went.
loudly and disappeared. A feeling of nausea came over me, and I
Why is
vomited
blood
on my
looking
floor.
black? That's
The
a
last
problem.
thing I
If you're
remember was
throwing up
cleaning
black
myself
blood,
up and
you got
waking
an
up to
issue.
my alarm. It's been about a month since I had seen the top hat wearing man in my bedroom.
So it's been months.
The Christmas
And
season was
y'all,
in full
you ain't
effect.
tell your parents.
My
you gotta move
parents
out of the
weren't home
house?
because they got invited to some kind of event. So it was only me and my 3 sisters at home. I had to wake up early in the morning for work, so I decided to go to sleep. I rested my head on my pillow and closed my eyes. Not even 30 seconds passed until my sisters burst into my room and started singing obnoxious
Aw.
songs. This of course made
Yeah,
me
they wanted you
very
to play with
angry,
you.
but I thought if I ignored
wanted you to
them
play
that they
with
would
them,
leave me
honey.
alone. This was not the
3 little
case.
sisters. Aw.
As I pulled the blankets over my head, I started to feel the same cold feeling that I had in November. As the obnoxious singing subsided, I lowered the blanket below my eyes and saw the man standing in the
Yo,
corner of
this
my room.
creepy dude gotta go.
In one swift
He
motion,
looks
he
like,
charged towards
oh
me.
my god,
and
he
I
just
blacked
jumped at
out.
the screen. Stop.
When I finally came
He
to,
looks like
I found
the
that my
Christmas version
sisters
of
had
Slender
locked
Man.
themselves inside the bathroom. As I knocked on the door, they told me to go away. I asked them what happened, and all they could say was Mom and Dad were on their way home. I looked down and
You're
saw that
bleeding.
my hand was slightly bloody. Holes were in the bathroom door, and a
There's a
broom
whole
was sticking
broom
out of the
in
wall. I then walked into the living room and found that there were knives stuck into the wall as well. The same wave of nausea passed over me, just like in November, and I threw up again.
Black blood again?
As I was cleaning up, my parents walked through the door.
Oh my god.
My father immediately walked over to me and gave me
His
a good
dad beat
beating.
him.
Then he sent
It's
me
not
to
his
my
fault.
room.
He was not trying to kill his
I
sisters
went
on
to
purpose.
bed crying,
I
not from the
mean,
beating. I was crying
I don't think I
because of
would
the
have beat him. I think I
confusion.
would have just
I had no idea
thrown
what was
holy
going
oil,
on.
locked
The
him in a
next
room
morning, my
with
sisters
some crosses and
reluctantly
some
sat
holy
next
oil.
to me and told me what had happened. They said I got angry and chased them down and tried to hurt them. They said my eyes were red to the point where they thought I was bleeding from them. They said I sounded
Oh, his
like a
eyes are
different
red.
person.
Oh no.
In 2011,
Honey, you were possessed by Satan.
that was the last time I saw the top hat wearing man. I just moved into
So
a
you
new
moved into your own
apartment,
place now?
and after a long, stressful day of unpacking, I took a shower and got ready
Cool.
for bed. As I started to drift off, I could feel that cold feeling again. I lifted my head and saw the man
Bro, where does
standing
dude keep
in
coming
front
from?
of me.
Now the
The
demon's
man's
eyes are
were
red.
red now. With a low voice, just like
He's a
on that
wannabe
November
Christmas
night,
Slender Man. Like,
it
stop.
looked at me and said,
Never leave. Always here.
So, okay, so this was our second story. Y'all, I believe he was possessed by a demon. That demon in the top hat was his little demon trying to possess him. They need to tie him up, put some holy oil, some crosses, some Bibles, some other blessed things in a room and lock him in it. I know this isn't like cool to say, but honey, I don't know what to say. You're out of luck with me on that one, because you got possessed by a whole demon. You tried to kill your sisters. Your daddy beat you. Now, your daddy shouldn't have beat you. You were being possessed by a demon. What he should have done was taken you to a priest to get you exorcised from the demon. Get the demon taken away so that it can't hurt you anymore. But this was a good story. I told y'all about my little demon experience, that demonic thing that tried to get me on Halloween. I explained that to y'all. But if you didn't see it, y'all need to go check out my Halloween video of me watching scary stories too. So, alright. Down to the final video of the night. Alright guys, we are on to our last spooky scary story. And I hate that this has to come to an end, but you guys know that it's Christmas Eve and everybody wants to be in their beds by the time Santa Claus or whoever, you believe in Saint Nick, Santa Claus, whatever, whoever, comes to bring you your gifts and your presents and all that. So, we will get on to this final spooky scary story and then be done. So this is the last story, I believe. Let's see, Christmas Eve horror story. Hey. Ding, ding, ding. Christmas is here, horror stories all over them. Now we are going to die here.
Last year on Christmas Eve, I was working late. I'm 23. I work in New York City and commute home every day on the train. Since I'm one of the younger ones in the office, I got stuck with one of the worst shifts, so I wasn't able to get home until 5 o'clock. My family had already left a whole hour earlier to go to my cousin's house, so I had to drive
they
alone.
left a whole hour early. They were prepared.
After having a quick snack before the half-hour drive, I got back in my car and put my cousin's address into my phone. Halfway through the drive, it started snowing. I got to my cousin's house around 6 o'clock. It was snowing heavily by this point, and I just made it in time to catch everyone starting dinner. I brought all of my gifts inside and cheerfully said hey to everyone. I stayed until around 11 o'clock. The rest of my family left a little sooner. I stayed an extra half hour or so just to hang out before leaving myself. By the time I was leaving, the ground had accumulated at least 2 feet of snow, and it wasn't even done snowing.
Jeez, 2 feet.
The drive home was nightmarish. The roads were hardly even plowed, and I had to drive under 20 miles per hour on most roads. The roads were completely dead at this point though, most likely because everyone was smart enough to go home before the snow accumulated.
Hello, it's Christmas Eve.
Eventually I turned onto a main road that I'm sure would usually be bustling, but at 11:15 on Christmas Eve night, there wasn't a single car or a single light from the store.
It
was a ghost town. But then I did notice the flashing taillights of one car. It was parked on the side of the road, and the smoke seeping out from its exhaust with the taillights giving it a red tint. As I got closer, I realized there was somebody next to the car waving their hand in the air. I assumed something was wrong and they needed help. So, me being the good Samaritan I am, I pulled up behind the car. When I opened my door, the guy approached me immediately, barely even giving me time to step out.
No. See,
he was an average-sized man,
that's red flag number 1.
Probably 5'10", 180
Why
pounds.
he look like a rip-off Santa?
He spoke in a very demanding voice, asking me if I know anything about fixing an engine. I told him I didn't know much about cars. The guy responded very quickly to everything I said. He told me it's fine.
That I don't know how to fix a car.
He went inside of his car for a second, popped open his trunk, came back out, and told me to just wait by the trunk for a second.
Wait by the trunk?
I had no idea what he wanted me to do. I was really confused.
First off, he
walked over to the front of his car, and I heard him open the hood. I couldn't see anything he was doing since the trunk was blocking my view, and the loud wind of the snowstorm overpowered any small noises he might have been making. I put my hands on the back of the car and leaned my body in anticipation, when suddenly I heard 3 or 4 quick and aggressive footsteps in the snow behind me before I was pushed into the trunk. The man tried to close the trunk on me, but I kicked my feet up in resistance and held it up. I was able to overpower him and kick the trunk open completely. As I took advantage of the few seconds I had to get out of the trunk, I took out my keys. He tried to grab me now, and I dug my house key right into his neck. He fell to his knees and his scream echoed down the deserted street. I was in my car and halfway down the road before he could even get up from his knees.
Pedal to
A
the
little
metal, let's
further
go.
down, I called 911 and reported the guy. I came back in 10 minutes to find blue and red lights illuminating the windows
I
of the
wouldn't have
deserted
stayed.
stores. The police held him until the ambulance
Yeah, I
arrived
would've just
for
called the
him.
cops and went home.
I watched the whole thing, and
Why would
nothing
you
ever
stay and
felt
watch
better in
the
my
whole
life.
thing?
I got home safely half an hour
Going
later and
home.
told my family
I
everything.
called the cops, made sure that they
I was
took
still
him.
very
I'm
shaken
going
that
home. I'm not
Christmas,
gonna stay and watch
and this
them
remains possibly the
interrogate.
most
I ain't doing
horrific
all that.
thing I've ever experienced.
Ooh, man. I could not imagine. Alright, guys, that was the last story. But, like, this dude, I condone him for jabbing the, jabbing the key in the guy's neck. I condone him for calling the cops, but I would not have stayed. I would have went home. This dude just tried to kill me, and I'm gonna stay and watch him get arrested? Please, I'm going home. It is Christmas Eve. I ain't got time for all that. Anyway, let's go on to my final thoughts and be done with this video. Okay, guys, so that was 3, count it, 3 Llama Arts stories. So I hope you guys enjoyed these beautiful, festive, on the eve of Christmas videos, and I hope that you guys like it. Leave a like, comment down below on what you want to see next. If you want to see more of these, hit the bell to stay notified of when I post, because I'm gonna try in 2020, that is one of my resolutions, to post more. I get really distracted and procrastinate a lot, and so I don't post when I ought to. So that is going to be a new goal for me this year, to post more. But if you guys would like to see more of this and other things, you already know what to do. Consider subscribing to the channel if you are new, and if you already follow my channel, be on the lookout for more content. And also don't forget to follow my couple's channel. I will also put that down below. And have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I love you guys. Mwah.